Imagine being an ancient Greek citizen for a second. You're walking through the agora, you hear a street musician playing a song, and you just start tapping your foot.
Right, completely naturally.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you sway a little bit. The rhythm is, I don't know, just slightly unpredictable, a bit syncopated, kind of catchy. But then suddenly, the authorities step in.
Oh, wow.
You are considered a threat to national security. And not because the song had, subversive lyrics, or because you were rioting, but because the government literally believes the underlying mathematical ratios of that beat you're tapping your foot to, well, they are actively destroying your moral character.
It sounds like a dystopian science fiction novel, but that was the actual intellectual reality for centuries.
It's just wild to think about.
It really is. There was this genuine, deeply held philosophical conviction that sound waves were not neutral. They were structural. They literally believed music was a technology designed to build or, demolish a human being.
Which completely flips our modern understanding of technology, right? Usually when we talk about a tool, there is this expectation of physical, mechanical utility.
Cause and effect.
Exactly. You pick up a hammer to drive a nail, the wood is joined, and you point to the finished house and say, well, the tool built that. It is clean, it's reassuring, and it acts upon the physical world in a way we can actually measure.
Right.
But then you step into the realm of human history, and you look at how we have engaged with sound, and suddenly that mechanical certainty just gets turned entirely inward. We are looking at an invisible technology.
An internal architecture, really. And what makes this so incredibly compelling is that different cultures developed, entirely different blueprints for what this architecture should look like and, what it was supposed to achieve.
And that is exactly our mission for you today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are exploring the profound, almost magical power that human beings have attributed to music and rhythm throughout history.
Yeah, we are entirely bypassing the idea of music as just like a catchy tune you put on in the background while you fold laundry.
Right, no background music here.
Yeah.
We are looking at how different civilizations viewed sound as a vital tool for survival, for character building, and really for navigating the universe.
And we have an incredible stack of sources for you today to do this.
We really do. We're pulling from historical treatises on early Western music and Pythagorean mathematics to these really complex ethnomusicological studies of West African polyrhythms, all the way over to evolutionary biology theories on the social functions of musicality.
And we are contrasting two completely divergent worldviews from these sources.
Mm-hmm.
On one side, we have the ancient Greek idea of musical ethos, which is this belief that music is a prescriptive force that shapes morality from the top down.
Right.
And on the other side, we have the experience of inner time in West African traditions, where rhythm operates from the bottom up, serving as a descriptive simulation of the chaotic reality of life itself.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if the Greeks were terrified of rhythmic chaos, they must have built some sort of, mathematical fortress to keep that tension out of their music. And the sources point out that this fortress starts with one guy and, ironically, some hammers.
Yeah, it's the legendary origin point of Western music theory. So, according to ancient accounts, the mathematician Pythagoras was walking past a blacksmith shop.
Just a casual stroll.
Right, just walking by. And he heard the sounds of metal hammers of different weights striking the anvils. And he supposedly noticed that the sounds produced a pleasing harmonic resonance.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And when he explored the acoustical principles, he found that the pitch was inversely proportional to the weight of the hammer.
Okay, wait, let's pause here, because my brain immediately flags a physics problem.
Yeah.
If I hit an anvil with a really heavy hammer, it doesn't necessarily make a perfectly tuned musical note compared to a lighter hammer.
Was Pythagoras just getting extremely lucky with the blacksmith's tools? Well, actually, it is almost certainly a myth. Modern acousticians and historians have pointed out that the physics of striking anvils with hammers of different weights, it doesn't actually produce the harmonic ratios the legend claims.
Oh, solely busted.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The math of a hammer doesn't dictate the pitch of the ring in that neat mathematical way. However, the myth points to a very real discovery Pythagoras made using strings.
Ah, okay. Strings make more sense.
Right. If you take a single string under a fixed tension and pluck it, it makes a sound. If you place a bridge exactly in the middle, dividing the string in half, so a 2-to-1 ratio, and pluck it, it sounds exactly an octave higher.
Oh, wow. So the math is undeniably real when you apply it to string length.
Exactly.
So if you have a string and you hold it down, say, a third of the way along its length, so you were plucking the remaining two-thirds, which is a 3-to-2 ratio, you get what musicians call a perfect fifth.
And a 4-to-3 ratio gives you a perfect fourth. These simple, really elegant integer ratios correlated directly with the most pleasing harmonic intervals to the human ear.
It's just math.
It is. And the Pythagoreans took this acoustical discovery and extrapolated it into a massive comprehensive cosmology. They basically decided that if sound is governed by simple math, then the entire universe must be governed by this exact same math. Music wasn't just a nice sound, it was the literal substrate of reality.
And the sources mention that Plato later adopted this exact Pythagorean diatonic scale to describe the construction of the universe's soul. But the math gets incredibly dense here. The sources talk about a scale built on stacks of 9 to 8 whole tones and 256 to 243 semitones.
Yes.
Wait, pause. 256 to 243. What does that actually mean if I am just a guy plucking a lyre string in ancient Athens?
It means that the Greeks were prioritizing abstract mathematical purity over what might naturally sound good to a human ear.
Oh, really? Yeah. So a 9 to 8 ratio creates a whole step, like moving from C to D on a piano. But when you stack those mathematical whole steps on top of each other, the space left over for the half step, the semitone, it doesn't divide into a neat, simple number.
It gets messy.
Exactly. The math forces it into this incredibly complex fraction, 256 to 243. To the Pythagoreans, it didn't matter if that specific interval sounded slightly tense or rigid. The math dictated that this was the true, pure order of the cosmos.
So they're essentially saying the universe is a giant, perfectly tuned calculator.
Pretty much.
The math is supreme. But surely someone pointed out that humans aren't calculators, right? We have ears, we have emotions, we experience sound in a subjective way.
That counterargument definitely existed. It came from a philosopher named Aristoxenus, who was a disciple of Aristotle in the 4th century BCE. Aristoxenus introduced a radically different model.
Okay, what was his take?
Well, he severely criticized his predecessors, whom he dismissively called the harmonicists, for being completely obsessed with abstract number theory. Aristoxenus argued that music theory absolutely must be based on human perception, on hearing and reason.
So Pythagoras is essentially a calculator, and Aristoxenus is a set of ears.
That captures the divide perfectly. While Pythagoras treated intervals as discrete mathematical ratios that existed entirely outside of human experience, Aristoxenus treated them as continuously variable quantities that the human ear actually navigates.
That makes so much more sense to me.
Right. He focused on human cognition. He basically argued that it is the physical sense of hearing that judges the magnitudes of the intervals and human reason that understands their functions. The math doesn't matter if the ear rejects it.
But here is where both the calculator and the ear, well, violently agree. Because whether they were looking at it through the lens of Pythagoras' pure math or Aristoxenes' human perception, the Greeks universally believed that music possessed this active, almost aggressive power to change who you are.
Yes, absolutely.
Which brings us to this massive foundational concept in the texts: ethos.
Yeah, the word ethos roughly translates to character or a fundamental pattern of being and behavior. The core of Greek musical philosophy was that music could convey, foster, and actually generate specific emotional or mental states.
Wow.
It was not passive. It was an active agent that programmed the human soul. They believed that specific musical modes, what they called octave species or tonoi, had distinct, predictable ethical powers.
I want to know exactly how this worked. The sources mention Plato and Aristotle explicitly linking music to the well-being of the state. Like in his Republic, Plato argued that music was absolutely essential for educating the youth and molding the character of the ideal state's guardians.
He was very strict about it.
Yeah, he even categorized the modes by their moral impact, saying the Dorian mode caused virility and courage, while the Lydian mode caused relaxedness or effeminacy. Why? Why did a specific arrangement of notes guarantee a specific moral outcome? Was the Dorian mode just louder?
It wasn't just volume. It is a combination of cultural association and acoustic mechanics. Culturally, the Dorian mode was associated with the Dorian people, including the Spartans.
The
Spartans. Right, and the Spartans were known for strict military discipline, hardiness, and martial prowess. So, music in their traditional style naturally carried the cultural baggage of Stoic heroism.
That tracks.
Conversely, the Lydian mode was associated with the Kingdom of Lydia in Asia Minor, a society the Greeks stereotyped as wealthy, luxurious, and decadent.
Okay, so it is kind of like how we might associate a twangy acoustic guitar with rural country values, and a synthetic bass drop with a hedonistic nightclub. There is cultural conditioning at play.
Cultural conditioning, yes, but they also believe the acoustic mechanics actively reinforced it. The specific placement of the half steps in the Dorian mode created a sound that felt anchored, severe, and resolute to the Greek ear. It didn't waver. But the Lydian mode, however, utilized interval jumps that sounded softer, perhaps more melancholic or languid. The philosopher Aristides Quintilianus later wrote a comprehensive treatment on musical ethos, going so far as to assign ethical categories of male and female to various musical parameters. He insisted that these sounds literally reorganize the physical humors and the soul of the listener.
I have to say, it sounds like they treated music like a nutritional label for the soul. Like, this Dorian melody contains 100% of your daily recommended virility. Warning, may contain traces of Lydian relaxedness, which could compromise national security.
It really is an incredibly rigid way to view art.
Was there any pushback against this? Did everyone in ancient Greece just accept that hearing a specific scale automatically equals a specific moral outcome?
There was a fierce, ongoing debate, actually. While heavyweights like Plato and Aristotle saw music as a powerful moral tool, sects like the Sophists and later the Epicureans argued the exact opposite.
Really? What do they say?
The most notable voice of dissent in our sources is a philosopher named Philodemus. He asserted that music is merely a sensuous combination of sounds and rhythms. It has absolutely no inherent moral weight, no connection to piety, and zero ability to shape character.
So what did Philodemus think was actually causing people to feel things when they listened to music? Because clearly people were feeling things.
He argued that it is the words attached to the music that move the audience, not the melody itself.
Ah, the lyrics.
Exactly. For the Epicureans, who valued the pursuit of simple, moderate pleasure, music was just an article of luxury. It served only to please the senses, much like enjoying a well-cooked meal. You wouldn't say a bowl of soup makes you braver, and Philodemus argued you shouldn't say a Dorian melody makes you braver either.
Which is the exact debate we are having right now in modern society. Think about it. We constantly argue about whether violent video games or aggressive song lyrics shape human behavior and cause violence, or if they are just pure entertainment that reflects society but doesn't mold it.
It's the exact same anxiety.
The Greeks were having that exact same argument over whether a specific sequence of acoustic half-steps would cause the downfall of their civilization.
And that anxiety over the downfall of civilization stems from their deep fear of losing rational control. The Greek state wanted to regulate music because they genuinely believed an unregulated musical diet would lead to an unregulated, chaotic populace.
And if they had a strict nutritional label for pitch and melody, they had an even stricter one for time itself.
Oh.
Because if melody is the thought, rhythm is the heartbeat, the Greeks practically weaponized rhythm to control emotions. How did they measure and categorize time to do that?
We look back to Aristophanes for the foundational theory of rhythm. He built it on a concept called the chronos protos, which translates to the primary time.
Primary time. What does that actually look like in practice?
You can think of it as the absolute smallest, indivisible unit of time perceptible to the human senses in a given piece of music. It is the atomic structure of the rhythm. Imagine it as a single, short syllable in poetry, or a single quick tap of a drum. Everything in the rhythm is built upward from this single atomic unit. It cannot be subdivided further without losing its musical meaning.
So it is like the pixels on a screen. You can't have half a pixel. You just combine these single pixels of time to create larger shapes.
A perfect analogy. And they divided the movement of these time pixels into two fundamental parts, the thesis and the ursus.
The thesis and ursus.
Yes. The thesis represents the downward beat. This was historically literal, the putting down of the foot or the hand by the conductor or the dancer. The ursus is the upward motion, the lifting up of the foot or hand. By combining these primary times into different patterns of downbeats and upbeats, they created their rhythmic measures, or what they called feet.
And just like they assigned virility to certain melodic scales, they assigned massive moral and psychological weight to these rhythmic feet. The sources mention that Aristides Quintilianus classified rhythmic ethos into 3 distinct classes.
He broke them down into the systoltic, the diastoltic, and the hesychastic.
Walk me through those. What makes a rhythm systoltic?
Systoltic rhythms were considered depressing, or in their terminology, effeminate. They were structurally suited for love songs, expressions of compassion, and songs of lamentation.
So sad songs.
Right. The downward pull of the rhythm, the heavy emphasis on the thesis, was thought to physically draw the human soul down into a state of humility or sorrow.
Okay, so heavy on the downbeat, dragging the spirit down. What is the opposite of that?
The opposite is the diastaltic rhythm. These were elevating, heroic, vigorous, and expansive.
So a lot of arsis.
Exactly. They often emphasize the arsis, the upward lifting motion, or use rapid successions of short beats to mimic the quickened pulse of adrenaline. They were designed to spur action, to literally elevate the soul toward bravery.
So if you have rhythms to make you cry and rhythms to make you charge into battle, what is the third one? The hesychastic. That sounds like it sits somewhere in the middle.
It does. Hesychastic rhythms were soothing and calming. They were meant to bring the mind to a state of peaceful moderation, freeing the soul from agitation. They were mathematically proportional, perfectly balanced between the downward thesis and the upward arsis.
Oh, nice and even.
Yes. Because of this balance, they were typically used for hymns to the gods, paeans, and didactic songs meant for learning.
The sources have this completely mind-blowing detail about the hesychastic rhythm. The Greeks believed so deeply in this balanced mathematical time that they tied it directly to physical biology. They noted that people whose bodily pulses naturally matched the slow, moderate time of a hesychastic rhythm were considered exceedingly healthy.
The mechanism there is absolutely fascinating. The ancient Greeks operated on the medical theory of the four humors: blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm.
Right, the humors.
They believed that extreme emotions boiled or froze these humors, causing physical illness. Therefore, a calm, mathematically symmetrical rhythm wasn't just pleasant, it literally regulated your heart rate and balanced your humors. It was the definition of healthiness of the soul. They wanted your actual physical heartbeat to conform to their idealized mathematical music.
And tempo played a huge role in this biological regulation too, right? The speed at which you play these rhythms altered the moral effect entirely.
Yes, the ancient texts note that rapid rhythms were considered warm or hasty, literally heating the blood. Slow rhythms were relaxing and cooling.
But what did they do with rhythms that didn't fit neatly into these mathematical boxes, rhythms that were uneven or unpredictable?
They absolutely detested them. What they called mixed or unproportional rhythms, where long and short beats were combined without a clear, simple mathematical ratio, those were considered licentious.
Wow, licentious.
Yeah, they viewed rhythmic unpredictability as a dangerous distraction that failed to exalt the mind and instead catered to the baser, chaotic instincts of the body.
This shows how holistically they approached this. Greek musical composition wasn't just handing a musician a sheet of music and saying, hey, play this. The sources describe something called melic composition. It was a complete, tightly controlled package.
Everything was planned.
Right. It comprised the melody, the text, the prescribed rhythm, and stylized dance movements. Every single element was engineered to induce the desired state.
The pacing and structure were entirely prescribed. For instance, the spondee, which is a rhythmic foot consisting of two long, heavy beats, like two slow, deliberate steps, that was reserved exclusively for solemn hymns. It demanded physical and mental gravity.
And the opposite.
Well, the anapaist, which consists of two short, quick beats followed by a long beat, sort of mimicking the sound of a galloping horse, that was used for energetic marches to physically induce vigor in the troops.
So if you are a citizen of this ideal Greek state, your music is fundamentally top-down. The philosopher kings figure out the math, they assign the moral value, they write the melody, the lyrics, and the rhythm, and you, the listener, simply receive it to have your character appropriately shaped. It is a prescriptive way to mold the individual.
It is a highly analytical, almost sterilized approach to sound. The theorists, like Aristides Quintilianus, often sat back and debated the effects of music intellectually. They analyzed it in a vacuum, studying the written mathematical ratios, almost as if they were studying a score they couldn't even hear.
Just doing math on paper.
Exactly. It was entirely about controlling the environment to ensure a predictable, safe outcome in the individual.
So the Greeks built a mathematical fortress to keep the chaos of reality out of their music. But what happens when we look at a culture that realizes you cannot keep tension out of life? Instead of building a mathematical fortress, what if you built a sonic training ground?
It's a completely different approach.
Right. And that brings us to our second foundation from the sources, West African polyrhythm.
It is a profound shift in perspective. If the Greek system is built on singularity, A single, unified timeline dictated by a conductor's Dan beat to enforce order, the West African musical tradition is driven by the generative principle of cross rhythm. Here, the meter is fundamentally designed to exist in a permanent state of metric contradiction.
A permanent state of metric contradiction. We're talking about multiple, conflicting rhythmic patterns happening at the exact same time. And the core foundation of this, the absolute DNA of West African rhythm, according to the ethnomusicological sources, is the 3-to-2 relationship.
Often referred to as a hemiola, the 3-to-2 relationship involves layering 3 evenly spaced beats over 2 evenly spaced beats within the exact same metric framework.
Right.
So instead of a simple 1-2, 1-2 march, you have one part of the ensemble playing a duple rhythm, while another part is simultaneously imposing a triple rhythm right over it. They belong to a single Gestalt, a unified whole, but they are constantly, intentionally pulling against each other.
Okay, if you are listening to this deep dive right now, I want you to try something physically to understand what we were talking about. Tap your hand on your steering wheel or your desk in a steady 1-2, 1-2 rhythm.
Easy enough.
Yeah, but now keep doing that and try to tap 1-2, 3 with your other hand in the exact same amount of time.
Your brain will immediately start to panic. The physical coordination required is immense.
That panic you feel in your hands is the metric tension we are talking about. It feels like trying to pat your head and rub your belly, but that analogy is honestly too soft. It is more like 2 gears of different sizes, one with 2 huge teeth, one with 3 smaller teeth, locked together. They are spinning at the same time, pulling against each other, grinding slightly, but perfectly meshing and clicking together on every 6th rotation.
That gear analogy perfectly illustrates the mechanics of it. And to understand why a culture would base its entire musical foundation on that grinding tension, we have to look at how these rhythms are conceptualized linguistically and culturally. In many non-Saharan African languages, there isn't even a specific word for rhythm, or sometimes even for music.
Wait, really? No word for music?
Because music and rhythm aren't abstracted into separate, isolated categories to be studied in a vacuum, like they were for the Greeks. You don't need a separate word for music if rhythmic musical behaviors are simply an indissoluble part of rituals, daily life, work, and ceremonies. It is an action, not an object.
But practically speaking, if an entire ensemble of drummers, bell players, and singers are all playing these conflicting gear teeth rhythms, what keeps the entire thing from just collapsing into disorganized noise? I mean, how do they stay together?
The anchor is what ethnomusicologists call the timeline. This is a basic, repeating rhythmic pattern, very often played on an instrument with a sharp, piercing attack, like a forged iron bell.
Okay, the bell.
Right. The timeline serves as the temporal anchor, the lighthouse for the entire ensemble. Every other instrument, whether it is a supporting drum, a lead drum, or a shaker, plays its specific, conflicting pattern in strict, direct relation to that timeline bell.
The sources show how Western ethnomusicologists have tried to map this out using Western tools. They use something called the time unit box system, or TUBS, to transcribe these polyrhythms visually.
Yes, the grid system.
Right. When you look at it, it is literally a grid of boxes, like a spreadsheet. A dot in the box means hit the drum, and an empty box means rest. But a spreadsheet feels so lifeless compared to the actual music. I imagine the African drummers themselves aren't passing down Excel spreadsheets.
They do not know. They rely on mnemonic syllables. They use spoken words and vocal sounds that directly mimic the acoustic sound and the physical stroke required to play the instrument. This is a vital part of the oral tradition passed down through generations by griots and master musicians.
Give me an example of how that works. How do you vocalize a drum strike?
The sources give fantastic examples. In Liberia, a specific rhythmic pattern might be sung by the teacher as kiki siki siki. In Nigeria, a pattern might be vocalized as konkonkolo konkolo.
Oh, I love that.
And these syllables carry immense data. They don't just tell you when to play. The vowel sounds and consonants tell you how the drum should sound, like whether it is a muted slap, an open tone, or a bass note, and exactly which hand technique to use. Kong is an open, ringing tone. Ki is a sharp, closed slap.
Konkonkolo. You can literally hear the bounce of the hand and the resonant tone of the drum just by speaking the words. It is embodied knowledge. It lives in the throat and the hands, not as abstract math on a piece of paper. But I want to go back to the philosophical core of this. Why build the music on tension? Why force the listener and the performer to constantly straddle that uncomfortable space between 3 beats and 2 beats?
Because that contradiction is recognized as a sonic simulation of human existence.
I love this concept. The sources cite C.K. Ladzekpo, a master drummer and scholar, who explains this beautifully. He says this isn't just an aesthetic choice to make the music sound cool, it is a profound philosophical worldview.
Ladzekpo explains that from the perspective of the African musician, crossbeats, those secondary rhythms that push, pull, and grind against the primary beat, they symbolize the challenging moments, the emotional stress, and the unavoidable obstacles we all encounter in life. Grief, conflict, scarcity, sickness.
And the main beats, the steady 1-2, 1-2.
The main beats represent your life's purpose, your core drive, your sanity, your forward momentum. Ladzekpo states explicitly that playing crossbeats while staying fully grounded in the main beats prepares a person for maintaining their life purpose while actively dealing with life's challenges.
That is just, well, it's an incredible framework.
Sure.
So imagine the main 4-beat scheme is you, walking your path, resolute. But crashing against that path is a 6-beat cross rhythm, representing all your stress and obstacles. The goal of the musician isn't to stop the cross rhythm. The goal isn't to pretend the obstacles don't exist. The goal is to learn how to manage both simultaneously without losing your footing. Managing the tension in the music literally trains your brain to manage the tension in reality.
And contrast this sharply with the Western musical tradition, which inherited so much of its DNA from the Greeks. Western music generally emphasizes the primary beats. When there is rhythmic or harmonic tension, like a dissonant chord or a syncopated rhythm, the Western ear expects it to resolve quickly. The tension is viewed as a disruption of order, and we want the dissonance to find consonance.
We want the fairy tale ending. We want the tension to go away so we can feel safe again.
But the African cross rhythm forces everyone involved to sit within the tension. It demands that you accept the contradiction not as a flaw to be resolved, but as the natural, permanent, unresolvable fabric of life. Ladzekpo notes that by duplicating these stressful phenomena in the music, we actually inoculate ourselves against the stress of reality.
It is a total paradigm shift. The Greeks used music to build an idealized, frictionless utopia, just hiding from the chaos. The African traditions use music to equip you for a chaotic, friction-filled reality. But to play such incredibly complex, conflicting rhythms, you need immense physical and mental coordination. Not just inside your own head, but with the entire group of musicians around you. You cannot just go off and do your own thing, or the entire simulation falls apart.
This absolute requirement for profound group cohesion brings us to the ultimate goal of the African ensemble performance. It is a state of being that ethnomusicologists refer to as inner time.
Inner time. What exactly is that? It sounds mystical. Is it like a psychological flow state?
It is similar to a flow state, but it is uniquely, deeply communal. Ethnomusicologists define inner time as the special, almost transcendent awareness shared by the performers and the audience when an ensemble perfectly synchronizes all of its disparate, conflicting parts. It is the moment when the musicians, the singers, and the dancers become completely, inextricably involved in the music they're making together. The boundary between the individual and the group dissolves.
And getting there isn't instantaneous, right? It is a highly structured process.
Yeah.
The sources outline the exact phases of layering these rhythms to reach inner time.
It is a deliberate architectural buildup. It begins with staggered entrances. The timeline bell starts alone, establishing the anchor.
Okay, the anchor is set.
Then, one by one, the supporting instruments enter, each locking their specific jagged puzzle piece into the timeline. This leads to the second phase, the synchronization of parts. This is where the polyrhythmic texture is fully established and grooving. Everyone is holding their ground, managing the tension.
And once that groove is locked in and the foundation is strong, the lead drummer or the soloist can start taking risks.
That is the third phase, the controlled creativity of the soloist. The lead drummer improvises, pushing violently against the timeline, creating even more complex, jarring cross rhythms.
Testing the group.
Exactly. The soloist is essentially throwing unexpected life obstacles at the ensemble, testing the boundaries of their cohesion. And if the ensemble holds strong, if everyone maintains their rhythmic purpose against the soloist's obstacles, the entire group crosses the threshold into the fourth phase, inner time.
So what is actually happening to us biologically when we hit that state of inner time? Because the evolutionary biology sources in our stack have a lot to say about why this intense synchronization is so incredibly powerful for the human species.
This brings us to the evolutionary mechanism. How did intense rhythmic synchronization serve human ancestral survival? The cognitive and anthropological research indicates that rhythmic synchronization triggers profound pro-social effects in the brain. When we move our bodies and make sound in perfect time with others, the brain releases a cascade of neurochemicals, particularly endorphins.
Endorphins are the body's natural painkillers, right?
Yes, and they also facilitate social bonding. This synchronized release leads to dramatically increased feelings of liking, rapport, trust, affiliation, and cooperation among the group members. It literally binds a group together on a neurochemical level.
The sources refer to these synchronized musical behaviors as honest fitness signals. This concept just blew my mind. The idea is that a highly synchronized polyrhythmic musical performance is incredibly hard to fake.
It's impossible to fake.
Right. If you are weak, sick, or cognitively impaired, you cannot hold a 3-2 cross rhythm while dancing for 2 hours. It requires immense aerobic stamina, flawless motor coordination, and high-level cognitive processing to remember and execute these interlocking patterns.
From an evolutionary standpoint, those are the exact same physical and cognitive traits required for ancestral survival strategies, most notably persistence hunting.
Now, wait, when I think of hunting, I think of absolute silence. Stalking prey quietly. Why would a hunting party be drumming and singing?
The drumming and singing aren't happening during the stealth phase of the hunt. The communal rhythmic rituals serve as the preparation and the neurochemical training for the hunt.
Oh, the night before.
Right. Persistence hunting involves tracking a prey animal, like an antelope, during the hottest part of the day and essentially running it until it collapses from heat exhaustion. This requires extreme physical stamina, pain tolerance, and incredibly tight intuitive party coordination over many hours.
So by dancing and drumming together in complex polyrhythms for hours the night before, they are flooding their systems with endorphins to raise their pain tolerance. They are locking in their nonverbal communication.
Exactly. It is coalition signaling. A well-synchronized drum ensemble is essentially broadcasting the physical strength, the stamina, and the high-quality cohesion of their community. If a group can lock in together on these grueling, complex rhythms, it signals to themselves and to any potential rivals or mates watching that they can hunt together, they can fight together, and they will survive together.
And we see this communal survival mechanism carried out in highly practical, emotional ways across various cultures in the ethnographic data. There's a striking example in the sources from researchers who observed tribes in Papua New Guinea. They documented the community using collective chanting and synchronized swaying during violent, terrifying tropical storms.
They weren't performing for entertainment.
No, not at all.
It was a communal mechanism for stress relief and anxiety management. They used the synchronized rhythm, the shared biological entrainment, to literally hold the group's collective psyche together when faced with an uncontrollable, terrifying threat from the environment. The rhythm provided a psychological anchor when the physical world was chaotic.
Or think about the West African traditions where elaborate carved masks are combined with dance and polyrhythmic song. The music allows the performers to embody religious spirits and pass down vital cultural stories. Stories of warriors, of coming of age, of welcoming strangers, of spirit possession. The inner time achieved through the rhythm is the vehicle for transmitting their entire cultural memory from one generation to the next.
What is crucial to understand about these traditions is that they are entirely participatory. In the African model, there is no separation between the performer and the observer. To achieve inner time, you cannot sit passively in a chair and watch someone else do it.
You have to join in.
You have to be physically involved. You are clapping the timeline, you are dancing the crossbeat, or you are singing the vocal response to the leader's call. Your body must be part of the math.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis of our deep dive today. We have traced two fundamentally different views of what music is, what it does to the human animal, and how it is used as a technology. It is time to put them head to head.
On one side, we have the Greek view of musical ethos. It is fundamentally prescriptive, mathematically derived, and it operates from the top down.
Philosopher kings.
Right. The Greeks viewed music as a tool of the state, wielded by philosophers. Its purpose was to shape an individual's character and maintain a strict moral order. It sought to tame the human soul by forcefully aligning it with the rigid, frictionless mathematical harmony of the cosmos.
And on the other side, we have the African view of inner time. It is descriptive, it is polyrhythmic, and it operates entirely from the bottom up. Music here is not a mathematical formula designed to tame you. It is a sonic simulation of the complex, stressful, grinding reality of the world. Its purpose is to equip the individual and the community to handle obstacles through shared resilience. It seeks to ground the community, not tame the individual.
The contrast in how they even studied music highlights this perfectly. The Greek theorists analyzed music in a vacuum, isolating the modes from the messy reality of physical performance to maintain theoretical purity. African musicality rejects that isolation entirely. The meaning of the rhythm only exists in the physical, sweaty, communal act of playing it together.
I am struck by the supreme irony of this contrast. The Greeks were terrified of mixed rhythms. They called them licentious and dangerous because they disrupted the clean mathematical order they so desperately wanted to impose on the soul. But the African traditions lean directly into those mixed, conflicting rhythms. They build their entire musical universe out of them, specifically because they know that life is conflicting.
The Greeks wanted music to construct a safe, predictable utopia where tension didn't exist. The African traditions use music to stare directly into the chaos and train the human mind to survive it.
Which really makes me wonder how we are using music right now, today, in our daily lives. Are we listening to music like the Greeks? I know I am completely guilty of this. I pull up my phone and I have a deep focus playlist, a relaxing sleep playlist, an aggressive workout playlist. I am using music prescriptively. I'm using it to forcefully change my individual mood, managing my own personal ethos, isolating myself from my environment.
Many of us do exactly that. We use music as a personalized tool for emotional regulation, highly curated to our specific needs in the moment. It is very Greek. But we also still deeply crave the African model, even if we don't recognize the terminology.
And so,
Well, when we buy a ticket to a live concert or we go to a crowded dance club and we surrender our bodies to a shared driving rhythm alongside hundreds of sweating strangers, we are seeking rhythmic synchronization. We are chasing that profound neurochemical sense of community, affiliation, and shared humanity that only comes from achieving a form of inner time.
we are trying to prove to ourselves that our coalition is strong. It is incredible how both of these ancient philosophies still completely dictate our modern relationship with sound. We've gone from Pythagoras mapping the math of the universe on a single string, to Plato worrying about the moral decay of a Lydian melody, to C.K. Ladzekpo teaching us how the grinding tension of the 3-2 cross rhythm can literally prepare our minds for the heartbreak of real life.
From the moral prescriptions of Greek ethos to the communal bonding of African inner time, it proves that sound is never just sound. It is, and always has been, the invisible architecture of human experience.
And that brings us back to the question we started with. If music is a tool, what exactly are we building with it today? We spend so much time putting on expensive noise-canceling headphones. We isolate ourselves in our own personal, perfectly curated soundscapes. We are essentially living out the ultimate Greek ideal, managing our individual ethos, mathematically filtering out all the chaotic tension of the outside world.
But in doing so, we have to ask ourselves a difficult question. Are we losing the evolutionary magic of inner time? By constantly isolating our sonic environment to ensure our own comfort, are we losing the physical and neurochemical ability to synchronize with our community? The next time you listen to a piece of music with a complex, driving rhythm, ask yourself, are you using the music to hide from the world's obstacles, or are you using it to practice overcoming them?
That is a phenomenal question to leave off on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. The next time you put your headphones on, or the next time you find yourself tapping your foot to a beat you can't quite predict, listen closely to the rhythms in your own life. See you next time.